Okay, so this is probably my favorite framework. And the reason why I came up with this is because after speaking to thousands of people across all different sectors and in different businesses, whether a small business, whether you're a B2B business, i.e. business to business, or B2C, business to consumer, whether you're an individual, whether you're a global brand, it doesn't really matter. I realized that when it comes to marketing, everybody is really trying to answer three questions. And the three questions are, what can I create? How can I get that to the relevant people? And what can I get them to do? What can I create? How can I get that to the relevant people? And what can I get them to do? Or if you want three words, create, distribute, convert. That was pretty much it. I realized that everybody was trying to kind of answer those three things. And if you can do that consistently, then you're going to have success online, be it to grow your business, be it to get a job or to work up the corporate ladder or even to make money online. So when I say create, you need to create some form of content. When I say distribute it, you need to get it to the relevant people. And when I say convert or get them to take some form of action, you need them to act upon your content. So off the back of that, I decided to create what I eventually called the content quadrant. So for years I used to call it the 4 C's because it begins with 4 C's. But now I call it the content quadrant. And it looks at 4 different areas that answers those 3 questions. So the first area of the content quadrant is, if you didn't have this, you really couldn't do anything online. Well, you can do a couple of things, but you're not going to achieve the results that this whole podcast or video is for. And that is, you need to create some form of content. And content can be in many forms, from videos to images to audio to text and other things as well. But you need to create something. Now, you can have the best content in the world, but if nobody sees it, so what? It becomes almost pointless. And I've worked with so many people throughout my career, and even myself, I've experienced this, where you've created some content and you think it's the best thing in the world, and then you try to promote it and nobody sees it, or nobody listens to it, or nobody interacts with it. And then you become it can be quite demotivating, to be honest. So the next C, or the next part of the content quadrant, looks at this. And this is putting context behind what you're doing. And that means, how can people find your stuff or your content online? And except for advertising and going to a specific URL, i.e. www.yourwebsite.com, there's only 3 other ways that people can find your content online. I can't think of any other way. And I'll talk about those other ways in other pieces of content that I'll do. Now, you can create the best content in the world, and now you've got people to find it. But the next part of the content quadrant is really what social media is about. And that is, how can I get people to talk about what I'm doing? How can I build that conversation? How can I get people engaged? How can I grow my numbers? How can I interact with people more? How can I get people to talk about what I've created? And this bit is understanding how communities work, understanding how to fight online. And when I say fight, I don't mean getting into arguments. I'm talking about you're fighting for attention, so get attention. And this is the bit where you kind of go into the whole managing the conversation, scheduling, because again, this can take a lot of time, but the reward is there if done correctly. So the first part, creation, you've created the best content. The second part, context. People have now found your content. The third part, conversation. People are now talking about your content. But if you cannot do this last part and the fourth part of the content quadrant, you have a hobby. And I've met many people who said to me that they've got a fashion website or a football website. And I know before they've even said the next word, I know what they're going to ask me. And that is, how do I make money out of this site? Or I've got 10,000 unique impressions every month, and there's loads of traffic, and I'm getting busy, but I'm only making 100 quid. And they've not really focused on this last part. And that is conversion. How do I get people to take some form of action? And how do you eventually turn your hobby into a serious business? And that is what I call the content quadrant. And as I said, I'm going to, once the basic platforms, the basic foundations, the fundamental principles of this whole series is done, most of my content then will go back to one of them. And with the content quadrant, it'll probably be the one I'll be going back to the most. So I might talk about the 3 ways people can find you online, and I'll refer back to the context section of the content quadrant. So I hope that makes sense. As I said, the 4 C's, the content quadrant: creation, context, conversation, conversion. And again, everybody who's had success online has, without obviously going through it, they've ticked each one of those boxes. They've created something, they've got people to find what they've created, they've got people to talk about it, and then they've converted the people into whatever their so what factor is. If you haven't heard about the so what factor, please go back and check out one of the episodes earlier on. I think it's the 2nd episode, because I talk about it in a bit of detail there. So hope that makes sense. It's under 10 minutes. Thank you very much for listening. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Andrew_Davis. Check out Facebook, facebook.com/thinkingoutsidetheblog, if it is up yet. Like I said, I'm still debating whether or not to put that page up. And subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. And if you're watching this because you found it on Facebook and it's connected to my personal page, feel free to send me a friend request. So until next time, I will speak to you later.